Hello and welcome to the Cubs on Deck podcast. I am one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by the Iowa Cubs broadcaster, Alex Cohen. Alex, thanks for being my co-host this week. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on baseball season. We're in March, baby. This is March.
It is. This is March. For those of you guys watching online, I'm rocking my on YouTube. I'm rocking my Illinois shirt for the Illinois basketball game on. I have an IU guy on the show.
My IU socks you can't really see, so
I'm bringing bad luck, but it's okay. We don't talk about basketball. We get to talk about baseball. This is the first of 4 straight episodes here that we're going to do some previewing of the upcoming minor league season. So I launched this show, Cubs on Deck, at the beginning of the offseason, basically. So we've had a lot of analysis of players that are not playing baseball games. We've talked about prospect lists. We've talked about all sorts of stuff, but we haven't been able to talk about actual games that are getting ready to happen. So this should be a fun episode. We got Alex on this episode. We're previewing the Iowa Cubs. We'll have the other broadcasters on to preview some of the other affiliates coming up this year. But I thought it was most appropriate to start up on the top level of the system, starting off with AAA. Part of that is because it feels like some of the roster outside of those guys that might be up in the big leagues, trying to determine if they're big leaguers or AAA guys to start off the year. Besides those guys, we're pretty set for the Iowa roster for the most part in terms of what we think might happen.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the way that the team finished last year with Brennan healthy and with Matt, obviously, becoming minor league player of the year. So, I mean, you look at the top 30 prospects in the system for the Cubs via MLB Pipeline. I wouldn't be surprised to see 4 of the 8 start with Iowa, 3 of the 8, 5 of the 15. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but no, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you had a team that, for the most part, came up from AA at the back end of last year and finished up with us. And with the way the big league staff and the big league, bench and the big league, 9 out there, I wouldn't be surprised to see some familiar names that ended 2022 to start 2023 with Iowa.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, that it feels like there's more prospects up in AAA this year. And I think we've seen that the past couple of years where 3, 4, 5 years ago, it was almost entirely minor league vets, major league vets signed on minor league deals, stuff like that. We've seen more prospects make their way up to Iowa playing there, which has been super fun.
Yeah, I mean, my first year with Iowa was 2018, and you have players, that year, Mark Zagunis, Ryan Court, Chris Jimenez, and guys just to fill out the roster because of depth, because if the Cubs are making a run in the big leagues, you want that type of experience. Now you have, as I said, 5 of the top 15 prospects might start with Iowa. I mean, you have the future of the Chicago Cubs probably in the first 3 hitters of the Cubs order. Probably the first 3, starting pitchers for the I-Cubs are going to pay big dividends at the big league level. I mean, if you look at the starting rotation that could possibly be with Iowa, it depends who wins that 5th starter spot, but could Hayden Wesneski start with Iowa? Well, if he does, he's going to be a big part of the Cubs' future. Caleb Killian has been a top 15, top 10 prospect in the organization. You saw his first outing during spring. He's going to factor into the big league rotation. And then Javier Assad, who pitched well in Iowa, went up to the big leagues and pitched really well. Those are your first 3 starters, and they're going to factor into the big league rotation at some time soon. So it's a really exciting time to be an Iowa Cubs fan when you have those 3 pitchers who are all under 25 years old, all may start with Iowa. I think Wesneski has a better chance to start up in the big leagues, but who may start with Iowa and then will factor a major role into the Cubs rebuild. So it's cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you're getting into the starting pitchers because we're going to lead off with that. I want to say 2 things. No. I want to say 2 things before we get into that a little bit heavier because, one, you bringing up Ryan Court is how to get me excited about an episode.
There you go.
Bringing up Ryan Court.
Hollow, Illinois,
And then second thing is, before we get too deep into this, I want to congratulate you on a job well done early on in the spring training. The first game, right? Of spring training, you on the radio call, and that was I know that was a very cool thing for a lot of us minor league fans to experience. I can't even imagine for you what that experience was like and down in spring training calling on the radio.
You know what? Everyone asked, because it was my first ever big league game, and they're like, did you have the jitters? I'm like, you know what? It wasn't just the big league game aspect. The fact that it was just baseball and being down in Arizona and getting out of 22-degree weather in Iowa and getting down to 72-degree weather in Arizona and, getting into the ballpark and it's 16,152 fans. So, I mean, that could have been a Little League game and that would have gotten me amped up. But I was thinking back to all the games that I broadcasted. It's been a lot of them. And that's the second largest crowd I've ever called a game in front of. And the other one was the Tokyo Dome. So that's, that game will stick out of my mind for just like the first day back to school vibes, and then also just Cubs fans showing out. I mean, they were so impressive.
Because you're amped up anyways, because the first day of the year.
Yeah, I mean,
Plus you throw this new experience.
You get down there, the adrenaline's pumping. You get to hear David Ross, and all the players are excited too, and all the media's down there. They're excited. The fans are tailgating. Like it was the perfect atmosphere for spring baseball, and especially after Cubs victory. Here go Cubs go! Everybody's singing. Like you walk out of the stadium, and it's just such like a refreshing, nice feeling.
That's so cool. What was it like working with Cohen?
He's the best. I mean, it's like a mix between like a baseball savant and the mayor. I mean, he is just like the nicest and the most genuine human ever. And what really got me was his recall. We were talking about an at bat that happened in the first inning and the eighth inning, and he was going like pitch by pitch, sequence by sequence. I'm like, how do you remember that? Yeah. And he do that with all of his at bats in the big leagues and all of his games in the big leagues. And like baseball minds are just so superior in that way. Like their recall is incredible. It's incredible. And just talking to Coom and listening to his baseball stories and his broadcast stories and, working with Hall of Famer Pat Hughes, and he's just a special man. Like I wish everybody in this world could be like Ron Coomer.
Yeah. You mentioned the callback, and I think we're way off of Cubs prospect talk. I mean, yeah, kind of. I was listening to the Show and Go podcast recently, hosted by Just Baseball, and Taylor Davis is the co-host of that show.
He's the same way, man. It's the same way. He remembers everything. Like I could ask him about an at-bat in 2018 when we were playing Memphis in May. It's a Wednesday, and he's like, oh, well, he threw a fastball down the middle, and I took it down 0-1. Oh, I fouled off the next pitch. It was a changeup, 83 miles per hour, and then it was 0-2. I'm like, are you kidding me? And he does. Dude. And there's a lot of players and coaches who are like that.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Like he had Pierce Johnson, also former Cubs top prospect, on the show, and they were talking about a specific at bat against Luke Voigt when they were in the minor leagues. I think it was like 2018. I think they were talking about it, and they were going like you said, sequence by sequence. 2017
because Pierce was on the 2017 team, and I remember Luke Voigt against the I-Cubs in 2018 hit for the cycle, so people don't forget about that.
Wow.
So, yeah, he went like 11 for 20 against the I-Cubs, and then he got traded to the Yankees, and the rest was history. So
there you go. I love it. All right. Before we get into this preview of this upcoming season, I want to kick it back to last year because last year was a really fun season. I want to ask you, I guess, what was your favorite moment of last year's team? It doesn't maybe not even necessarily moment, just memory from last year's squad.
Being in the booth with you in Columbus.
Yeah, there you go. I love it.
I mean, I have to go to the last game of the season. Walk-off home run at home. Jared Young, literally 12 hours after getting option. He didn't have to even report. I mean, you have like the 72 hours to report. So he gets optioned the night before. We have a day game that next day. He gets on a 6 a.m. flight, gets to Iowa. We're down that entire game, and he hits a walk-off bomb to end the season, and we're on marquee. And it was electric. He was electric. Clubhouse was electric. Like I'll remember that one for a long time.
Dude, I bet the clubhouse was insane after that one.
It is what the kids and the young folk call lit. It was very, very lit. They were very pumped. And, just seeing Jared, like you go through that wave of emotions of, going up to the big leagues for the first time, getting sent down. And as I said, he didn't even need to report. But not only did he report, he wanted to be in the lineup, and he had a walk-off homer. And it was so cool, man. It was awesome.
That's amazing. I love it. All right. So let's get into the preview of this year. I'm going to follow kind of the same script for these next few episodes here. We're going to run through the starting pitchers, run through the relievers, and then finish off the episode with some of the hitters, which there's a lot of fun names to talk about. I'm actually really excited about the bullpen for this Iowa team, but we'll get to that second.
You'll be both, man.
We'll start off like you mentioned before. There's a interesting grouping of starting pitchers for this Iowa Cubs team, likely that will start off the year. Obviously, we don't have the rosters to begin the year, so all of this, I guess I want to preface this entire talk about the roster by saying, obviously, we're sitting here in March. The rosters are not set. we're just going off my assumptions at this point. So if I'm ever asking Alex or any of the other broadcasters about specific players, they don't know anything. I'm just going off my assumptions here. But
no, we're just talking ball. I mean, we're just these are purely hypothetical, and we're not at the point where we even have a glimpse of who our roster is going to be. Exactly. We have no paperwork. We know nothing, and we probably won't know anything for another couple weeks. So this is just two people talking baseball right now.
Exactly. So let's talk about Caleb Killian first. I know you like to talk about Caleb Killian, and he had a wonky season. We've talked about it a lot on this show. I think that Brian and I talked about it quite a bit on this most recent episode that we dropped last week. And he just had a very strange season, Caleb Killian did. And I know you got to see him kind of firsthand last year after he went up to the bigs, came back down to AAA. He had really good stuff. Like the stuff was a lot better than we saw in past years with Killian, but the command kind of escaped him.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why. I mean, we heard one a couple weeks ago that, he was a little banged up and not feeling 100% the second half of the season, which kind of matches because if you look at, film from May and then he made his big league debut in August, like he's a lot more tense. He's a lot more firm. There's not as much movement in the lower half. And you hear about like a back or a knee injury, like that kind of makes a little bit more sense. You have to remember that's his first year with a different organization. So you have a guy who was drafted in 2019, played the second half of that season. You go into that offseason 2020, you don't have a season. Then 2021, you have won a shortened season. Then you get traded. Then you get an offseason with the Cubs in 2022, and you have to deal with a lockout. So that's 3 years of chaos. So maybe got tired the second half of last year, and now finally – you have a normal offseason with the organization that traded for you. In the second year with that, you figure out what kind of techniques they like. You figure out their training program. You figure out their nutrition program. You work with people during the offseason that give you a certain throwing program, what to work on. You get in the lab. And I saw his first spring training appearance, and that was the Caleb Killian we saw in May. Guy who snaps off the breaking ball, can throw 95 to 97's, got the good cutters. So I'm bullish on Killian. I mean, he reminds me like height, body type, way he throws, breaking ball of Jack Flaherty. I mean, I said that on Marquee, and I'm going to own that. I think he's got really good stuff. And remember Flaherty, his first take at the big leagues, he struggled as well. So the big thing with Killian is being able to repeat the delivery, repeat the mechanics, and throwing strikes. You can't walk, 6 guys every 9 innings. And I think that's what he was at up in the big leagues and struggled with his control the second half of the year with Iowa. But, the first half, he was throwing strikes all throughout his minor league career beforehand. In college at Texas Tech, he threw strikes. So if he can get back to that, master the mechanics, not only do I think he'll pitch well in Iowa, I don't think he'll be there for long.
Yeah. And there's a few guys. You mentioned Wesneski and Assad as well. That there's that kind of trio in that might be in Iowa, but they might also spend some time in the major leagues right off the bat. I think Wesneski's probably that prime candidate of the three to start in Chicago, whether that's in the rotation or in that like Justin Steele, Keegan Thompson. Like, what is he? Is he a multi-inning reliever? Like, he's going to get innings in the big leagues, a significant amount of them this year. But that trio is going to be huge for the Iowa Cubs in one way or the other.
That's the best trio of starting pitchers we've had by far, by about 100 times since I've been there in 2018. So, I mean, and there was a back half of 2021 where, Justin Steele and Keegan Thompson were getting stretched out, but bona fide starting pitchers, guys who are going to go 4 to 6 innings. I mean, that's a 3-man rotation right there that you're probably not going to get better at the AAA level in Wesneski, Killian, and Assad. And we didn't really talk that much about Assad. I mean, he's just a strike thrower, a bulldog. I mean, he's somebody who can throw 5 pitches for strikes. And everyone talks about like the pitchability. Remember, he got his fastball up to 96 last year. Like, he still has good stuff and above average velocity. So I really liked him. He's somebody who can be versatile in a number of different roles for the Iowa Cubs and the Cubs. But I think he starts off in Iowa. He gets stretched out, and he's somebody who, especially when it's cold, and especially when you're in St. Paul in early April or Buffalo in late April, like our schedule lays out. Imagine getting a 95-mile-per-hour fastball off the hands from him. Ouch.
Oh, that's rough, man. I think that the starting pitchers are kind of the prime example of like what we were talking about before, where this transition into more prospects on the Iowa Cubs roster. And I think that like even last year, we didn't see a whole lot of prospects as starting pitchers in Iowa. So that's super fun. In addition to the prospects that are there, this is predominantly a prospect podcast, but we're going to talk about the other minor leaguers. There's some other vet guys, some veteran guys that will make up that rotation in Iowa at the back end of that rotation.
Yeah, you have Roenis Elias and Nick Nider. I mean, two guys with one big league experience, and they've shown that they have been productive swingmen, starting pitchers, relief pitchers, at any level. You have Elias, who was with the Mariners organization at one point. He was one of their top pitching prospects. I saw him a decade ago in a rotation that was Danny Holtzen, Brandon Maurer, James Paxton, and Roenis Elias.
What level was that?
That was AA. They were the Jackson Generals at the time. It was 2013.
Wild.
They were nasty. But no, Elias is a guy who can snap off a slider, not big, but throws strikes. And Nick Nider at one point was one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. Big righty, throws hard, and he's somebody that, let's say he doesn't break the rotation, he could throw the back end of the bullpen too. Yeah. He's got that type of stuff. So, we haven't even talked about Ben Brown or Riley Thompson. I mean, and you brought it up. I mean, the Cubs starting pitching depth goes deep. You have DJ Hurst, Jordan Wicks in AA. You have Daniel Palencia, wherever you want to put him, whether it's in the back end of the bullpen as a starter. It's so exciting to watch the Cubs organization, and if you're a front office member, if you're a fan who loves pitching, this is the time you want to watch the Cubs.
Yeah, man. You're probably a little bit jealous of Brendan King, who's going to be talking about the Tennessee rotation on our next episode, because like that Tennessee rotation. But at the same time, like, you are going to see those guys, right? You mentioned Ben Brown. You mentioned Jordan Wicks is going to be up in Iowa soon enough. DJ Hurst. There's a lot of dudes that are going to be starting off the year in Tennessee and not pitching the full year in Tennessee. So you're going to get a lot of good action in Iowa in the second half of the year too.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of action in the first half, and then you get the young guys up. This Cubs organization, and I'm not just saying that because I'm part of it. It is by far the most exciting it's been since I've been around, and it's been 5 years. And there's just so much talent. And you said your favorite part to talk about Iowa is the bullpen. There's a lot of talented bullpen arms too that we can get into. So I'm really excited. I know when you talk to Brendan King, he'll be very excited. I know when you talk to Max Toma, he'll be very excited. And then Sam down in Myrtle Beach, he'll be really excited as well.
I mean, like I've beat the drum so hard that the way that the Cubs have created this player development system this go around compared to the 2016 effort was just that they've built up this system that it is ready to produce every single year. There's always guys coming up to the system. Every year in Chicago, we're going to see 3 or 4 guys debut that could make an impact in Chicago for years to come. And like that is different, as opposed to back 10-ish years ago, we were seeing this big grouping of guys coming up at the same time. It's different. It's much more Dodgers like this go around. I really like that because you don't take years off, and that's huge for a major league team.
You don't, but you go back to 2016. I mean, you trade Dylan Cease, and you trade Eloy, and you trade Glaber, and it's just there's guys who are going to be traded, this year. When the Cubs are competing for an NL Central Division title, there's a lot of depth in the bullpen. We've already talked about the depth in the starting rotation. This team, the state that they have in the outfield is better than I've ever seen. They don't have enough. I mean, they have too many outfielders. They don't have enough spots. So it's going to be really interesting.
Let's go ahead and transition to the bullpen you're talking about, because I really like taking advantage of these preview episodes to talk about the bullpen, because relievers aren't often considered top prospects. So we probably talk about them less than what they deserve to be talked about. But the bullpen to start off the year, likely in Iowa, is absurd, dude. Like it is absolutely stacked. I mean, I'm looking at names here. Ben Leeper will likely be back. Danis Correa, Manny Rodriguez, Cam Sanders, Brennan Little. You can keep going down the line, and that's not even those are prospect guys, right? That's not even some of the veteran guys.
The Vinny Natolis and the Nick Neidert, if you do throw them in the back end of the bullpen. The Mark Lighters, and you have that mix between veterans and just guys who could be legitimate back end of the bullpen arms. Danis Correa in his first AAA outing goes 99, 100, 101 in his first 3 fastballs, and snaps off a 93-mile-per-hour slider. You have Ben Leeper, who has been on the prospect map since he really got signed in 2020. 97-mile-per-hour fastball with a big league slider. It really depends on Cam Sanders, if you're going to make him a starter or reliever. I mean, Cam in his first spring training game popped off 99. Manny Ramirez has been 97 and 98 and has big league experience. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I want to. One of my favorite guys is Leaper out of this bunch, and I think you put me onto this where his year last year was incredibly underrated given the way that he put up the numbers that he did. Where like if you look at the season long numbers, they weren't the prettiest thing. Like they were decent, you know.
They were fine.
Yeah.
He had 3 bad outings and 30 really good outings.
Yeah. So I
90% of his outings at the AAA level were dominant.
Yes. So I got his numbers pulled up here. If you take out Ben Leaper's 2 worst outings of the season from last year, he gave up 4 runs without recording an out on June 26th, and he gave up 6 runs, only recording 2 outs on September 11th. Outside of that, he threw 45 and a third innings. He had a 2.58 ERA. He had a sub-1 WHIP. Was striking out batters at a 32% clip.
Yeah.
Walking guys under 9%, like stupid numbers. If you take out those 2 like clunkers, right? And I know that like part of that,
you can't take out bad outings, but when you throw 30 times and there's 2 bad outings, you can sufficiently call them outliers.
Yes, I'll take them out. If people don't want to, I will. So it'll be good. But who is your favorite of this bunch that will likely be in Iowa?
I like Cam.
Yeah,
I mean, I like Leaper. I can't agree with. If I were to go on this and you didn't say anything, Leaper would have been my choice. But Cam's electric, and he's just like he's got the eccentric personality.
Yeah.
Feels like he's like a 1990s like kids movie baseball character. The way he jumps onto the mound and hops off, and his idiosyncrasies on the mound. But it's just such an easy, athletic 98 to 99. They got him throwing a cutter now. It's really good. He was able to snap off like a 73 to 75 mile per hour curveball that I've seen some of the ugliest swings and misses on. He's just got to maintain consistency, throw strikes, get confident. And when I saw him in big league spring training this year, he was confident. In his first outing, he was 98 to 99 in February. You don't just have arms like that. They don't fall off the trees. He's a special athlete and a special arm. And if everything comes together for him, I mean, he's got the big league background. His dad, Scott, is not only a big Iowa Cubs fan. Appreciate Scott. If you're listening, you're the man, Scott. But also a 9-year big league veteran. So he has the big league pedigree. He's got the stuff. Really athletic, former college shortstop. Can take a mean round of batting practice too. But he's my guy. If everything clicks for him, if the light bulb goes off, he's a stud.
And it's important to remember that this is his first spring training. This is his first full year of being a reliever, right? Like he entered last year, and he worked as a starter for most of the season. I think it was just the last month of the year that he was a reliever.
His first start with Iowa, he went 5 scoreless and struck out 9.
Yeah. And you mentioned it too, like the way he is on the mound. Like, he's just a vibe, man. Like he got the glasses, he's got like the hairs, like just everything about Cam Sanders is like I want to be Cam Sanders when I grow up.
He's like Bowers from Little Big League. He's just like got so much like energy.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. And I don't want to gloss over Danis Correa because I think that you mentioned the 99, 100, 101 with the wipeout slider. But like he has had a lot of success in like multiple years worth of really good success in the system.
He has. I mean, you look at his AA numbers, and they were nasty before he came up to Iowa. And then you'll see his AAA numbers are a little bit inflated, but he was also product of giving up the bad outing. I would love to see him break camp, obviously, with Iowa and put together 2 or 3 months, especially when it's cold, to see if you can get that 99 to 101 in on the hands of guys who don't want to be swinging at inside pitches. I think he's got a 4-pitch mix. I think he throws strikes. If you look at the walk rate, it's down. So that's nice to see out of the back end of the bullpen arm. Obviously not a big guy. I mean, he's 5'11" and 175 pounds soaking wet, but great kid. I'm very curious to see once he starts at AAA how that goes. If he can build on some positive momentum, able to locate the fastball, if you're going to spike a slider, do it in the right count, solicit some tough swings and misses, change eye levels. I think he's got the ability to do it. I think he's got a great pitching coach in Ron Vallone if he's here. I think RV would do a great job with them. So he's got the stuff. You again, 99 to 101. You don't get that all the time. So he's got a shot.
Yeah. We're sitting here recording this on March 2nd. I'm curious about what your answer might be to this. If we're going out there, it's a 1-run game. Who's throwing the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings for the Iowa Cubs out of the bullpen?
Cam's going the 7th, Correa's going the 8th, Leaper's going the 9th.
And then you get to play matchups with Brendan Little and the veteran guys and Manny Rodriguez, who has had plenty of major league experience. Like that's wild, dude. That's wild. It's so fun.
Yep, that would be for me.
And I'll be the first to admit that on the show that a lot of the times that how I tune into the different affiliates on a nightly basis to see who I'm watching. A lot of times my first idea, like I'm tuning in first based on the starting pitcher, right? Like I want to see whoever, if it's Jordan Wicks throwing in AA, I'm probably going to start with the Tennessee Smokies game. If I want to see Caleb Killian that night, I'm tuning into Iowa. That's how I kind of start my watching of the evening. And then after the starter comes out, then I tune into like whatever the lineup that I like most that night. That's how it goes into that.
Or like situations, like you see that Tennessee is floated and Pete Crow Armstrong's up, you're probably going to tune into that. You know, I have runners at first and third and 1 out, and Mervis is up in a tie game. You're probably listening. You're glued into Iowa Cubs baseball.
But this year, when it gets to the late innings, I'm going to have to tune in and listen to you call these games for Iowa because I'm going to need to see that 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, which is like not something that's always come into play for me in past years because like, I want to watch a certain at bat. But now, like appointment television for the Iowa Cubs bullpen, and that's fun.
Man, that's why our viewership's going to go up. I appreciate it.
All right. Anything else you want to hit on with any of the pitchers before we move on to some hitters?
I think we did. I'm curious to see what the back end of the rotation looks like. Riley Thompson could be an arm. Ryan Jensen can be an arm. I mean, these guys are college guys and obviously have had success at the AA level. And I think Ryan Jensen's a really curious case. I mean, he's a guy that you draft in the first round. You want to make a starter. I love the way that he's looked in short stints. I mean, we really haven't seen a lot of like bullpen experience, but man, his stuff's nasty. I mean, I could see him possibly being the best closer prospect out of all of them if they move him to the bullpen, but I understand why they wouldn't want to move him to the bullpen.
Yeah, I think that I'm really excited just to see how he's used this year. If he, assuming he starts in AA, but like there's an outside chance because he's on the 40-man roster that he does start with you guys in Iowa.
Yeah, no, he's 25. I mean, he's a guy who was a college first-round draft pick, and they're trying to figure out if he's going to be a big leaguer. I think he is, but if he's going to be a starter or reliever, and yeah, I'll put my baseball scout hat on. His stuff plays as a reliever, man. He could be really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I last guy I do want to talk about because I think that this is a good opportunity to mention Riley Thompson because what just like an unfortunate like series of events for him over the past several years. He was like a top 10 arm in the system for me before the injury, before the lost COVID year, before all of that. And then he was another guy. We mentioned Leaper, like take out a couple outings and Leaper was lights out. You take out a few of Thompson's starts from last year, and he was really, really good last year. I think that he probably starts off the year in AAA Iowa. I don't know how he's used. He's another like Ryan Jensen type setup where it's like, is he a multi-inning? Is he a single inning? Is he very well could be a rotation guy in Iowa this year. And getting older for a prospect, but like still nasty stuff, man. The fastball is good. The fastball touches mid 90s. The changeup, I think the changeup has always been really solid.
One of the better ones in the system. It
is.
Yeah,
and then he always had that curveball, but now he's incorporating the slider. Like I just think that what Riley Thompson has as far as like the stuff is really good. He just needs to stay healthy, and I love it.
He's another pitcher who I think that if he starts with Iowa, he'll progressively get better. Ron Vallone's had a track record of really developing those high intensity, high level, like lots of innings arms. He did it with Eric Ullman. Like Eric Ullman was, he started with us in 2021 and he looked great, but he had 3 bad outings. Then he came back. RV worked with him in spring, and within 2 to 3 months, he was not only a big leaguer, but a high leverage big leaguer. And I think that once you get a college arm with lots of innings and trying to break tendencies and force tendencies, have a 15-year big leaguer try to help that. And I'll bring up RV a lot when it comes to pitching. He's the best pitching coach I've been around in 12 years of baseball. No BS. He's really good.
Yeah, and you want to hear more positive Ron Vallone talk, tune into the compound and just listen to Dakota Meckes talk about him, right? I mean, like, it's
he's the best.
Yeah, it's no joke. All right, let's go ahead and transition to some hitters because there are plenty of them to talk about. Always fun talking about the bullpen. We could probably go on about that topic for hours. But I want to mention a few guys right off the bat. We've already talked about it a little bit. Matt Mervis and Brennan Davis are likely going to start off the year in Iowa. We might also see Miguel Amaya start off the year. I think that Miguel Amaya might warrant a bigger conversation. So let's start off with Matt Mervis and Brennan Davis, two of the top prospects in the system.
Start with Mervis. I mean, he was the best hitter in minor league baseball that I saw last year, and he went through one of the hottest stretches I've ever seen in minor league baseball. In that end of August, early September, every fastball that you saw in the strike zone, you thought he was going to hit it and hit it 415 feet. The baseball felt like a beach ball every time it came into him. I mean, when we were in Columbus, he had 3 home runs in 5 games, and all of them nearly hit the Blue Jackets arena. I mean, he hit so far, and they were talking about it a lot on Marquee the first couple games of spring training. For somebody his size, he's 6'4", 235. It's so quiet. There's not a lot of movement in his swing. There's not that much swing and miss. He doesn't swing out of his shoes a lot. It's just calm. It's compact, and he has the natural strength. And you look at a guy with his power numbers, and he strikes out a little bit, but it's right around league average. He draws walks. He gets on base at a 350, 360 clip. Competitive at bats. He doesn't strike out on 3 pitches very much. We saw him in spring training, his ability to hit to the opposite field. I think that people want to see more than one big year out of Matt Mervis. Again, he's one of the people I'm bullish on. I think he goes up to the big leagues and then he can hit the crap out of righties. He can still hit lefties. He'll hit 20 to 25 home runs in the bigs, and he's getting better each and every day at first base. I think he could be a stud, but I think he's going to start the year in Iowa. He's going to play every day at first base because, remember, he was a pitcher in college, so he didn't play first base every day. Still trying to figure out his body, figure out his athleticism, as he'll admit to you. But just as a hitter, the improvement over the month that I saw him, and then even in spring training in the first 3 games this year, how calm he is, tracking pitches. He's locked in, and he's going to be a good big leaguer. And I would say that I'm excited to watch him in Iowa, but I don't know how long he's going to be there.
So he sucks, is what you're saying. That's the
worst.
Yeah.
Terrible, overrated. But no, with Matt, and again, like, I'm a little bit biased because I see the work that he puts in, and I see the type of intensity and pressure that he puts on himself. I'll give you a story. After that Columbus series that he hit 3 home runs in 5 games, we go down to Jacksonville, have an awful travel experience. That first game, he goes 0 for 4. It was raining at the time. We didn't have a rain out, but we were delayed an hour and a half. Probably should have been rained out. Ended up losing that game. He's taking batting practice the next day. And this is during a stretch where he's hitting like 500 over 10 games. Takes 1 round of batting practice. Not great. He is fuming, like visibly upset. And I walk over to him, I'm like, "You good?" He's like, "You didn't see that round? Like, that's the worst round of BP I've taken." I'm like, "Matt, you're hitting 304 with 36 bombs this year. Give yourself a break." And he's like, "I can't do that." And he has a couple other choice words, and he walks away. Well, the next day he goes 2 for 3. I think it's a double, drives in 3. No, actually, I take that back. He had a home run that game. And he comes up to me after, he puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, you know, I got you. I'm sorry. And I'm like, "You're good." Like, I would rather have a player like that who is very intense and has such like a high set of standards for himself to not only succeed at the AAA level, but get better each and every day to get up to the big leagues, than somebody who is okay with playing in Jacksonville on Labor Day weekend and, playing a doubleheader when you lose both games. So he's hungry, he's intense, and I couldn't say more about the guy.
He just seems like super hyper focused, like on perfecting his craft. Have you been around a guy that had another guy that has that type of mindset and that type of mentality?
One other, Ian Happ.
Yeah.
That's it. So when Happ was down with us in 2019, and granted it was under different circumstances, I mean, he was just like, "I'm going to come here. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to be a good teammate, but I am getting up to the big leagues. I'm doing everything in my power to get the AB, swing from the right side, swing from the left side, do early work, and get back up there so I never have to come back down here." And he hasn't.
That's a pretty good guy to be compared to in whatever way is Ian Happ. That's cool. That's really cool. All right. We talked about Brennan Davis. I mean, he is in my eyes still in that top 3 trio of prospects, him, PCA, and Kevin Alcantara. And Brennan Davis is coming.
Go figure. All 3 outfielders, go figure.
All 3 outfielders, all 3 playing in spring training with the big league club. So Brennan Davis is back. He is healthy. He's looking good out there. Like, he just he looks different than he did when he came back at the end of the season last year, right?
1,000%.
And I just so much with Brennan Davis is that athleticism. Like the athleticism lets him play in the box better than most other human beings in this world.
Yeah.
And to see that athleticism back, to see him looking comfortable is going to be huge. I cannot wait to see Brennan Davis hit baseballs in Iowa.
Just remember, we are under 2 years removed, a year and a half removed from Brennan Davis winning the Futures Game MVP by hitting 2 450-foot bombs at Coors Field, and then a month later making his AAA debut at 21 and homering in his first 2 at-bats.
Dude,
let's not forget that he's not 25, he's 23, and he's still, I think, 2 years younger than the average AAA player. I'm in. I'll buy stock.
I mean, dude, I can still remember you like making those calls when Brennan came up and put on a show in his debut.
First 2 games, he had 3 home runs.
It was it was wild, man. It was absolutely. I'm trying to pull up. I put together something that kind of showed who Brennan Davis was younger than. He's younger than more guys in the system than you'd imagine. He was the second youngest guy outside of Alexander Canario to appear in a game in AAA last year, which is wild.
If you put him on the AA roster right now, he let's say we project the AA roster, he'd be younger than 70% of them.
Yeah, and
we're not talking about a guy who's 25 or 26. He missed 3 months of last year, wasn't healthy, came back, hit a home run in his last AAA game, helped us win the game. Then he went to the fall league, got better, got his at-bats in, and now he's in big league spring training healthy. I think he's somebody that's still going to go through his lumps a little bit, but he's a big league outfielder when healthy, and he's a middle-of-the-order bat when healthy.
I think there's been a lot of talk about PCA and the way that the current major league team is constructed, and if the major league team needs to sell off the deadline, they trade away Cody Bellinger, then it's like, all right, maybe it's PCA time in center field at the second half of the season. We're forgetting about a guy named Brennan Davis. I think that we're just kind of pushing that off to the side. It's like we're excited, and I'm as excited as the next guy for PCA, but let's not skip over the other guy.
Overall prospect in baseball at this time last year.
Yeah,
Brennan was 5 months removed from being the Futures Game MVP, and we can reiterate the same points over and over again. Guys who are 22 years old in their first year of AAA are allowed to struggle, especially when your back hurts and then you have to have pretty major surgery. Give the guy a break. And I know it's easier said than done, but just seeing him come back, tracking pitches, underrated defense in the outfield, getting better in the corners with routes, and the arm plays. I mean, he had a stretch last year where he had 3 outfield assists in 5 days.
Yeah.
He can do it.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I still have him as my number 1. I think I'm the only person in the world that still has him as my number 1 ranked prospect in the Cubs system.
He's probably my 2. I just think that PCA, when you have 3 tools that are just out of this world, the speed's always going to play, the defense is always going to play, and the arm's always going to play. So you got 3 out of 5 right there. And I think that, even at his worst, those will all be 65 grades and above, which you just don't get with Brennan, but with anybody else.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, the third guy, the third top prospect type guy I wanted to talk about was Miguel Amaya. And Miggy might start off the year in AA, but I think it's a good shot we see him in Iowa to begin the year. And I think that in looking at the catcher setup in Iowa, I think it's perfect for him to be in AAA to start off the year, because you're looking at a roster that currently has Dom Nunez is currently a Cub, and so is Luis Torrens.
Yep.
And to have a setup where Miguel Amaya can play and be a third catcher, not playing as much as a third catcher does. The Cubs love to have the setup in the farm system where there's always 3 catchers at an affiliate, and typically the third one does not get a whole lot of playing time. That's not how this would happen with Miguel Amaya. But you got to remember that he is also coming back from a lot of injuries, and so to be able to utilize him as a DH and also utilize him behind the plate with Dom Nunez, with Luis Torrens, I think it's a perfect setup for Miguel Amaya entering this year.
You hit the nail on the head, and I think having 2 catchers with big league experience to really try to cultivate and mold that, and especially Amaya, who's trying to come back healthy, hit that, those guys making sure that he doesn't come back too fast, and just getting him on the straight and narrow, the right path. I think that we could see a situation where he might catch twice in a week, once in a week, but then he'll DH 2 or 3 times. At the latter half of last year, that swing looked pretty. It really did.
Yeah.
Very curious to see how he hits at the AAA level if he starts here. But if he is here, I think it's actually the perfect situation. I think it would work out. I completely agree with you.
He definitely revamped his pre-swing set, his stance, and his load. Like, there's a lot of differences.
Quiet, so much more quiet.
It is so much more quiet. I think the swing is pretty. I feel like we talked earlier about Matt Mervis and how he was walking and walking a decent amount and striking out. And like Mervis was a guy that, as he climbed up through the system, he was striking out less and walking more, which was like a wild concept.
Yeah.
Miguel Amaya, when he was younger, was doing that through the system. He wasn't doing it in the same year like Mervis was, but he was going from Eugene to South Bend. Well, when South Bend was a low A at that time, from Eugene to South Bend to Myrtle, like he was going up through the system and striking out less, walking more. Like, he's got a really good plate approach in addition to now a pretty swing.
I like him. I hope that he's healthy. I mean, that's been the big, number one question with him is, can he stay healthy? Can he play a 150 to 162 game season? And fortunately now Major League Baseball with the DH available, he'll have better opportunities to do that and play first and catch. And you just hope that his body can hold up after dealing with really a lot over the last 3 years.
Do you think a guy so we talk about like innings limits and stuff like that for pitchers a lot as they're returning from injury. Is that a thing with position players? Have you noticed?
I think with catchers, just with knees, and sometimes I'm dealing with like forearm issues. Early in the year, they'll try to build it up. You probably won't see a guy catch back-to-back days. And if you have 3 catchers on a team at the AAA level, you'll see them each catch twice early on. And then when you get into May, and then when you get into June, when guys have to hit a certain amount of at-bats in order for them to, get considered for a call-up or get that sample size, you'll start seeing it divvied up a little bit different. But especially early on when you're trying to build up into that 162-game season, up in the big leagues and 150-game season at the AAA level, you'll see it spaced out a little bit more.
I think an underrated thing with outside of the player situation that we're talking about, I think an interesting thing is how the AAA level has seen more games with all the adjustments to the league, to the minors over the past few years. It's more like a major league schedule in terms of workload, and I think that I don't know how that's going to translate to player development, but it's just interesting to me, I guess.
Well, they want the AAA schedule to mirror the big league schedule for call-ups and other reasons like that, just to make it more harmonious and easier to get guys from point A to point B. And I think that it helps the big league level. When you get into September, guys who aren't, sitting on their couch for 2 weeks, that you can just call a guy up who has been playing up until September 17th and September 20th instead of September 2nd or September 7th. I think that's a pretty big difference, especially for a team that could be vying for a playoff berth or an NL Central Division title. I think that matters.
For sure. So we talked about the 2 veteran catchers behind or working with Miguel Amaya. There are going to be a lot of very familiar faces to Cubs fans in Iowa this year, whether that's prospects that have been in the system for a long time or guys that were brought back. Jared Young and David Bodie have been in the system in the organization for what seems like forever. Levi Jordan has been around for a good amount of time at this point, and Sergio Alcantara is back. And Sergio it seems like he's been outside the organization, back in the organization for like years now.
Yeah, the Cubs do that. I mean, in 2019, we had Dixon Machado. He came back in 2022. And then 2021, we had Sergio Alcantara, and he comes back in 2023. So just rotating veteran shortstops. And, guess what? Dixon Machado then gets traded to the Giants, makes the big leagues. Alcantara last year makes it back up to the big leagues, and he's with Arizona, and he gets there too. So just having big league 4A caliber shortstops at a premium position, that's pretty important. We talked about Jared Young earlier. I mean, he was one of my favorite players to watch in 2022. He started off hot, led the team in home runs, cooled down, worked his butt off, and was able to make his big league debut, and now he's playing for Team Canada. So he's really worked hard. And the best part about Jared is he came up as a first baseman. He was in college, he was a second baseman. And then they gave him reps in left field, right field, and he played the majority of last season for the I Cubs out of necessity. at third base. It's just a guy who likes to play baseball. So he's got the pretty left-handed swing. He can drive the ball to all fields. I think he's a 4A player who can spend more time up in the big leagues than time in Iowa. Now, you talked about Levi, him playing shortstop at the back end of last season was one of my favorite things to watch because he hadn't played shortstop since his college days at Washington. Just the unbridled joy on his face getting back there, it was really fun to watch. David Bodie having one of the best spring trainings for the Cubs. I mean, the game that I was able to call, he had a 420-foot shot to dead center field. He's somebody who has contributed at the big league level the last 5 years. So being able to have him as a depth piece, playing third, playing second, playing short, it's really nice to have for Iowa. I think he'll be back in the big leagues at some point this year, especially if he keeps on hitting this way. One other player, Miles Mastrobuoni, who came from the Tampa Bay Rays organization. I know Miles pretty well. I used to broadcast for the Bowling Green Hot Rods with the Rays. He was there at single A. He hit then. He's hit at every level, and he's hitting right now. I mean, he's a guy who he kind of reminds me of Tommy La Stella, just like that left-handed bat. You can wake him up in a storm, throw him off a bus at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he'll go 2 for 4 with 2 singles and draw a walk. He'll just hit, and he can play second. He played second a lot when I saw him in 2017, played a little bit in the outfield with the Rays, and he could play short. He's really versatile as well. So it'll be nice having those guys and familiar faces, and with Stroh, somebody I've known for the last 5 or 6 years, really good baseball player. So there's a lot of depth there.
As you were talking about Jared Young specifically, I don't know if it was a tweet or it was something years ago. I remember this specifically from years ago where it was somebody asking, they go, if you couldn't look at any stats, like no numbers, nothing, if you just looked at a player, who do you think would be one of the, who would you take first in a draft?
It would be Jared. It would be
right?
Jared.
Like you just watch him play.
6'3", got like the most beautiful swing ever. It's like you could put it in the loop. It's like that pretty left-handed Cody Bellinger swing. It's a little bit calmer. There's not a loop to it. Like watching Jared Young take batting practice is one of my favorite things to do.
Jared Young is in the No Stats Hall of Fame. That's official.
Yeah.
And he puts up good numbers. He's put up good numbers in the system too. But
extra base hits a year. He was second up in the ICUPs in home runs last year. I mean, he's been a productive. Not only was he a really productive college hitter, but he's been a productive professional hitter. He was a Cubs minor league player of the year a couple years ago. So I like Jared. I think he's a big leaguer. But as you said, like he's in the no stats. He's in like the swing Hall of Fame.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
There's two guys that I want to talk about that I am really high on that I don't know if they're going to start in AA Tennessee or AAA Iowa. But they were really productive hitters last year in AA. They're back, and it's Chase Strumpf and Jonathan Perlaza. Both guys. Perlaza put up better numbers overall, but Chase Strumpf was still very productive in a weird in a 3 true outcomes type of way. Jonathan Perlaza is just like one of the most entertaining guys in the system.
Jonathan Perlaza reminds me of a left-handed version of Nelson Velasquez. I mean, they are just both yoked and insane athletes, and the ball just jumps off their bat in a different way.
Dude, I'm saying that Jonathan Perlaza is a fullback, man. Like put Mike Allstott's jersey on him. Ooh, like Jonathan Perlaza could run through somebody, man.
Or like a Mike Singletary middle linebacker. I mean, he is a monster, and he's got a pretty swing too. I mean, I saw him hit a double the other day, the opposite field, and it's fairly controlled. And obviously, watching him in AA last year, like the power numbers are there. Chase Strumpf he reminds me a little bit of Ryan Court in 2018. He ended up making the big leagues in 2019, just like that big, broad shortstop, like the Troy Tulowitzki build shortstop, like Sergio Alcantara's 5'8", and Chase Strumpf is 6'2", 215, and looks like he could hit a golf ball 360 yards. There's a reason that he was a second round draft pick or an early round draft pick, because the body and the frame's there. He's really smart. He can hit to all fields. And you said the 3 outcomes. He's a guy who had 234, but had like a 370 on base. Like I'm gonna take a guy who gets on base 37% of the time and can hit 20 home runs.
Yeah. I on the last episode here, for listeners that you might get tired of this, but I was comparing Chase Strumpf and his development path to Ian Happ and his development path, and I didn't expect to get into that super deep on last episode, but then I went deeper and deeper. I was like, you know what? It makes sense where it's like they were both drafted as not known for their defense second baseman with high contact tools.
Yes.
Then over their minor league career,
high on base tools.
Yes,
the ability to get on base 40% of the time.
But both of them had like good, like they were known for the hit tools when they were first drafted, and then as they went through the system, the hit tool kind of went down, the power numbers went up, and they became more of that 3 true outcome guy. Ian Happ is a guy who he's figured out how to incorporate that hit tool back into the mix and find that right balance. That's what Chase Strumpf needs to do, I think, is find that right balance. But for what it's worth, like I'm all about him being productive in whatever way it is. Like production is production.
Yeah,
you need to diversify a team.
You know what? If you hit 234, you got to hit 15 to 20 bombs and get on base 36 to 37% of the time, and he's doing that. With Happ, being drafted as a second baseman and a hitter, and then turning into an all-star Gold Glove caliber left fielder. Not everybody can do that, but I think Chase as a second rounder, really smart kid. I talked to him a little bit in spring training last week. I like him. I think that he can do a little bit of everything. I think he'll play a little bit more second, not as much short, but he's somebody that if you put him over the hot corner, I bet he could play third. Or if you stick him in left, I bet he could play left. Were people in spring training really calling Chase Strumpf the cheese man? Because that's what he said on the wait, that's way out of context. So people listening there, the Cubs posted something on social media and it was asking players what their nickname was. And Chase Strumpf came back and said that his nickname was the cheese or the cheese man, which I thought was hilarious, dude. That's a great nickname. No, I didn't hear that.
But yeah, I can't believe that people actually call him the cheese man.
You know what? I'll ask him that when he's here. I mean, hopefully he starts with Iowa. There's a log jam on the left side when you have Alcantara, like Luis Vasquez was with Iowa for 2 months last year. Does he start with the I-Cubs? You have Miles Mastroboni, you have Bodie. I mean, there's guys who you have to get into the mix. And when you have a player like Strumpf, you want him to play, if not every day, you have a 6-game series at the AAA level, you want him playing at least 4 of them.
Yeah, I think that's the deal with Strumpf and Perlaza. They both have done enough in AA to warrant the call up to Iowa, but they're both dealing with positions that have a lot of log jam up in AAA right now. And one more guy I want you to gush about before we wrap up the hitters. I want to hear you talk about Darius Hill because he will be in AAA.
There we go. If you weren't going to bring him up, I was, and I love him. Dude hits. I mean, he had the most hits for a Cubs minor leaguer in 10 years, and it's not the prettiest at bat. It's not the prettiest swing. Like, he'll foul off a couple pitches that just like he didn't even look like he was tracking, but then it'll be an 8-pitch at bat, and then he'll fist the ball in a shallow left field and he'll tie up the game, or a pull ball through the right side and he'll give the I-Cubs the lead in the 8th inning. The quality of at bat and the bat to ball skills for Darius are some of the best that I've ever seen. You're not going to get 10 to 15 home runs with them, but you might get 7. And I think if he was playing in 1993 or 1989, he's playing in the big leagues for 10 years. Yeah. But now because you're stuck in the outfield and you want somebody to hit 20 to 25 home runs, he's not going to do that. But he's going to probably hit 275 to 295 up in the big leagues if he's there. And he's going to get on base 33% of the time, and he's not going to make a mistake in the outfield. He is one of my favorite players I watched last year.
The at bat reminds me a little bit of like a classic John Jay back when he was with the Cardinals. Like
fight off, slap around, yeah.
Like when I picture like prime John Jay, it was like he was just fouling off so many balls into the third base dugout because like he was spoiling like 2-strike pitches. And just sending them line drives into the third base dugout.
Or like spike sliders. He was like flicking his bat and like rolling it down the third base line. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think with Darius Hill, I want to see him. Like you mentioned that like he's going to get the job done in the outfield. I want to see him like play like a really good center field. If Darius Hill can play a really good defensive center field,
his best position is center field. Just the way he goes back on the ball and the comfortability. I know he's been doing a lot trying to get the arm strength, like doing long toss and weighted ball stuff. I think they were getting him in a little throwing camp exercise too. So he's got enough speed. He's smart. I think he's a big leaguer. I really do.
Yeah, and him in center field plays easier in Wrigley no matter what, right? Like you mentioned, like he's really good going back on baseballs. We watched Dexter Fowler for a couple of years play really shallow center field take away those balls in front of him, and then go back really well on balls hit over his head. That's what Darius Hill does well.
Guys who aren't necessarily fast, but take the best routes. I mean, Albert Almora did that for 5 years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. All right, man. Is there any other hitters that we're missing here that you want to get into?
I mean, it depends if Edwin Rios starts in AAA. I mean, I've seen Edwin when he was with the Dodgers hit some of the longest home runs I've ever seen. I mean, he's a guy who can provide versatility. He can play third. He can play first. I think he starts off the year up in the big leagues. Really curious to see how Pete Crow Armstrong does, how he does the rest of camp. And if there is an off chance that he starts in AAA, I don't think he does because he's 20 years old. I came away from Pete Crow Armstrong. He had the most impressive 0-for-3 game I've ever seen. He had 2 line drives to left field, opposite way, worked back from down 0-2, brought it to 2-2, and hit the ball. I would say exit velocity was around 100 to 102 miles per hour. He grounded out to the right side and nearly legged it out. He walked, he stole a base, he scored a run. He nearly threw a guy out from the warning track. I like him.
He plays like his hair's on fire.
And
it's so spot on that he was traded for Javi Baez, that Javi Baez was his favorite player, that he plays exactly like Javi Baez, right? Like when you watch him run the bases, like that's Javi Baez.
Yeah, he's just a lot faster than Javi.
Yeah, exactly.
One other guy I'd like to bring up, I can't wait to see when Alexander Canario gets healthy.
Yeah.
I think that, obviously Matt Mervis had 36 home runs. Well, Alexander Canario had 37.
Yeah.
Look at Alexander Canario's stats. Got on base at a 350 clip. I mean, he's a guy who has drawn walks at every single level. Like you think of Canario, you think of power, but swing and miss. No, he draws walks, and he doesn't strike out all that much. His defense in the outfield, routes were getting better. He's got a straight up cannon as an arm. He legitimately has 5 tools. Like he can hit for average. He does have a good eye. Like his arm is strong. He's got the power. The ceiling is there for Canario. I hope he gets healthy, but he was a lot of fun to watch last year. And I think that in this situation, if he's healthy and playing in spring training, you're talking about, say, a Suzuki being out for a certain period of time due to an oblique injury, instead of Mike Tauchman and Nelson Velasquez, you could be talking about Alexander Canario getting that chance.
Yeah, that's the best raw power in the farm system. I know that Matt Mervis went and hit 36 bombs too, but like Alexander Canario, when you're talking raw power, like just puts on a light show.
Yeah, I mean Velasquez, Perlaza, and Canario are guys that like you listen to them take batting practice, you close your eyes. You close your eyes, you listen to the ball hit the bat, and you're just like, that's something different. I mean, Mervis has that too, but Canario is just so live and free and easy and athletic.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you've hinted at a couple guys already. I kind of wanted to end this show talking about a couple different things. One was I'm curious about the guy that we almost surely know will not be assigned to Iowa to begin the year that you are most excited about. I'm guessing PCA is probably the answer. We've already talked about some of the pitchers, but
that's the cop out. My second one is Daniel Palencia.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about raw stuff and raw ability. He's got the best raw stuff in the system. When you got that fastball 100 to 102, there's a 93 mile per hour changeup. I mean, I don't know if he's a starter. I don't know if he's a reliever, but he's got something, and
he's damn good.
I can't wait. Yeah, he throws the absolute piss out of the base.
Yeah, I love it. All right. So we've talked a lot about players on the field and what they can do on the field. One of my favorite things to talk to you about is guys and how they are off the field. Because you're with these dudes every single day. You're seeing them on the field during batting practice. You're seeing them in the clubhouse. You're seeing them around outside of game environments. I'm curious about what you're most excited for, whether it's a certain group of players, if it's anything like that. What are you most excited for off the field this year?
I'm excited for booking Jared Young tee times to play golf.
There you go.
So that's other duties as assigned at the minor league level. I also sell advertising for the team. I also deal with travel, but I'm also the golf trade out guy. So having players come up to me on a Sunday night after a long travel day and put their hand on my shoulders like, hey, can you book me a tee time? Jared's pretty good. Levi Jordan can play. Brennan Davis wasn't playing with us because his back hurt, but I heard he's a really good golfer. Eric Stout's a good golfer. So, just seeing what they like to do.
Who's the best of the bunch? Who's the best golfer of the bunch?
Eric Stout, probably. I mean, So Luke Farrell was with Iowa for some time last year, and he was by far the best golfer. But I mean, hey, Jared can play. Levi's pretty good. But Eric Stout, that pretty left-handed swing, and he's a pretty good golfer.
How are you competing out there on the?
I'm abysmal.
Same,
every synonym of terrible. That's me. I am the perfect scramble golfer that I hit like 5 or 6 shots per round. I'm like, we're gonna take that, and everywhere else, I am useless. I'm completely and utterly useless.
That's incredible. I love it. Anything else that you're looking out for?
I think the Iowa Cubs are going to be really good. I mean, we obviously
man.
won the division in 2019. This year, talent-wise, just looking on paper, they're better than that. They're better than that. I think their starting pitching early on in the season is really going to carry them. It really depends on how Matt Mervis is going to be here, how long he is, how Brendan Davis is going to be here. But Darius Hill's always going to be a productive AAA hitter. How long David Bodie's going to be there. Sergio Alcantara's a 300 hitter at the AAA level. They could be really good. They could be really good. I'm intrigued to see how the paper resumes fit into on-field translation.
Hell yeah. So everybody out there listening, the first home game, well, the first game is a home game for Iowa this year. You guys are taking the field on March 31st, so we are in the month of baseball games. They're playing March 31st it's a 7:08 first pitch at Principal Park in Iowa. For those of you in the Iowa area, in the Des Moines area, go check out the game. For those of us not in the area like me, tune in, listen to Alex calling the game on that night.
Yep. Yeah. Listen in AM 940. You can also stream us live, MILB TV, listen live application. Again, we'll have a lot of our games on Marquee Sports Network this year. You can stream it live on Bally's Live. And there's just a lot of different ways to consume Iowa Cubs baseball this year. And man, I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait.
You're the man. I can't thank you enough for coming on. Always a blast having you. It was always fun having you on the old show. It's good having you on this show. And
well, I have a bone to pick with you. You moved from Columbus. You don't even get to come to the game anymore.
Dude, I know. I can't come to the game in Columbus anymore. I'm more in South Bend's area a little bit more now. I'm working over in Peoria part of the time now. So I'll be able to see the South Bend Cubs when they go down to play the Chiefs. But yeah, not in the anywhere near an Iowa Cubs game. So I'll have to make the trip up to Des Moines. I think I don't want to speak too much about it, but I think that some of the north side bound guys have been debating an idea of coming up to Des Moines and catching a series.
You know what? When PCA makes his AAA debut, I'll save a seat for you in the press box.
There you go. I love it. All right, Alex, thanks so much. And for everybody out there listening, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. You can check us out on really anywhere where you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. Be sure to leave a comment, a review, all of the things. If you like this episode, if you hate it, comment and say Alex is the worst. That's fine.
No, especially if you hate it. I'm used to that with my House Hunters lore. So if you want to rip me, go for it.
You're in the famed house. You're in the famed house.
I'm here. I'm in the basement. Yeah, we're still here. We're still married. I know, contrary to popular belief, but no, I thrive with criticism. If you guys hate it, tell me, tweet me, email me, do whatever.
You please give Alex some criticism on Twitter. I would love to see the reactions back from him. That would be terrific. You can follow me on Twitter at Out of the Vines. You can follow him at Voice of Cohen. Thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's fun. Baseball season's here, folks. Let's go.